The upper part of this is going to be rabbit ears similar to what are shown here. And I would, under all normal circumstances, use the pen tool and I would use curve points to create the majority of this. For people that are learning how to use Illustrator, they often struggle with this. And so I want to show you an alternate method to drawing right off the bat with the curve points because it can actually be helpful. And it is a workflow that, a decent number of people are going to do. I'm going to do the left-hand ear first, the one that's bent. I'm going to scoot mine off to the side where I can watch it. And I'm going to try to sort of fit it within this general range of the screen. I'm going to click, and not normally I would click and drag, but I'm just going to click to put points. And I'm going to try to put points wherever there's a substantial shape change. Now, my stroke is nuts right now. It's really thick, and it doesn't need to be this thick, so I do know that I will be addressing that shortly. But for the moment, I will have to live with it. But don't get too distracted by that element of it. And I'm going to be doing one of these, where I'm going around the inner part of the ear, up and over, to give myself the shape ultimately that I need. I realize this looks really strange, but I'm trying to draw around the shape that ultimately I'm going to have and make use of. And the extra wide stroke is not making this any easier. It looks really crazy. All right, I'm going to turn the stupidly wide stroke off now, or at least down, and you get a little bit of a sense of what's going on with this, perhaps, when I switch it back into fill mode. So I very rarely draw with it in fill, even if that's ultimately the way it's going to look, because it's harder to visualize where you're heading than with the stroke turned on. Now, I have a lot of proportional problems. I started drawing the outside, and then I realized that I had switched to the inside, and anyway, it looks nuts. But I have the elements that I need in place. The first thing that I'm going to do to try to get it closer to where I'm trying to go with this is by moving, and I've got the lasso right now, this large group of points in, because they were way too far out, because I was in fact drawing the inside and the outside sort of almost simultaneously in a not good way. All right, I have all of them moved in enough that I think I've got something closer to what I need to work with. I'm going to select the whole object. I'm going to switch over to my white arrow, and I'm going to hold down my shift key and turn off one of the points. I want to make one of them hollow. As soon as I do that, I get access to the Convert Anchor Point tool, and that's what I need. So everything but a single point on this ear is selected. I'm going to click on the curve point, and it takes me to something a lot closer to what's going on with the drawing. If you look at it, that helps a lot just all by itself. And I'm going to come up to the one point that I didn't convert a minute ago, and I'm going to convert it now. And so from here, I'm going to refine this until it is closer to the shape that I'm after. And it's moving some points around, it's moving some things up and down and so forth in order to get closer to that overall look that I'm after. It needs to be narrow at the bottom here, and again, you can reference the images if you need to. If you end up with a position where you have points where they're not needed, like I have at least one extra point right there, if you come back with the pen tool and hover over an existing point, it will allow you to remove it. If you hover over a place where there isn't one, it will allow you to add. So you can definitely do a lot of pretty substantial editing, even just with that kind of thing. But I'm just moving some points around, trying to get this looking more earish and less blobby. I don't hate it in the blue even, but I'll keep going until it has the look that I'm after, basically. too many points is almost the perfect guarantee that you're not going to have a very smooth look. So if in doubt, fewer points is generally going to be better. They'll help, and I mean that looks nuts at the moment, but that's because this handle is not angled correctly. But that line is now much smoother than it was before I did that, and it needs to be thicker at the bottom here, but it can be if I move things. All right, that one is not correct. That point is not working in the way it needs to. Ha, there we go. All right, I was wrong. I do actually need one point that I took away there, so I can click on the path to add one back. And then with that, I can do the adjustment, get the tapering that I need, but still keep it somewhat smoother. All right, once you get one of the ears looking the way you want, you're going to do the other ear. The other ear is simpler in a lot of ways. It's pointy. It doesn't have the fold over bit, so it's an outline shape and an interior shape. It's a little bit easier to work with in that particular way. The one thing that mine is not doing that the original does is it doesn't have that sort of sharp corner where it makes the break, and so I did that just then. I will proceed with the right hand ear shape. At the moment mine is set to fill, which means until I go around the inner perimeter of this, I'm not going to be able to see very clearly that I am in fact doing an outline shape. As soon as I sort of make it around a little bit of the way, I'm able to see it a little bit better. I'm going to make sure when I come back to my very first point that I hover over it, see the pen tool with the 0 so I can close that object off, and then I'll do something similar to create the colored part on the interior of the ear. Alright, so having done that, select the outer part of the ear and hold down my shift key and click on one of the points and convert them all to curves. I will do the same thing with the outside part of the ear. And it just will not give you the access to that tool unless not the complete object is selected. The tip actually would be the best one to do that with because it shouldn't be a full-on curve. And that gets me a lot closer. Again, I'll have the sample one out here. I need to narrow it at the base. I need to smooth it out a little bit. But just that quick conversion is enough to make enormous difference. I have too many points on this one, which is making it lumpier than it ought to be. And I would do some more, but I think even with these changes, you get enough of a sense of how this one is supposed to work and look. You want to make sure that the width of the left and the right hand ear are consistent, and my left hand one is a little bit smaller than my right hand one, which looks a little weird. So I need to thicken one or thin the other one. That is one of the things often in design that draws the eye in a negative way is strange inconsistency when it doesn't necessarily make sense. And it just normally means that a final level of revision that should have taken place didn't, and that kind of thing. All right, so that's closer. I'm going to go ahead and call it close enough for these purposes. I would select the ears if yours are hanging off the edge like mine are and scale them down a little bit, but keep in mind you want to scale with the shift key. You do not want to scale non-proportionally because you can quickly create problems for yourself by ending up with something that looks squashed or stretched or something along those lines. And ultimately you're going to want to group the ears once you get them looking the way they need to look. So something like that is what we're going for there. I'm going to group my ears. So object group, and at that point I'm going to be ready to add my text. and do whatever tweaking and repositioning needs to happen. I'm going to do that as the very last step.